Hello and welcome to the alternative channel, Anti-War. We're looking at Drive-Thru Red Dry Hopped Red Ale. My friend David gave me this bottle. He brought two over and he said, let's use a bottle each to review. I said, no, let's just split one. Because we were trying all this other stuff. And he said, okay, you can keep the bottle. I said, you can take it back with you if you want, or I can keep it. It doesn't matter to me either way. I've had it before. He said, no, keep it. Either way, like I said, I'll get it next time I go to Trader Joe's. I didn't realize Trader Joe's had reopened here. I know it closed because of the coronavirus, but I guess it didn't close for long. And I asked him, I said, did you see the Waldos or like some other good stuff like Bigfoot over there? No, he didn't recall seeing anything like that. I've been looking for 2020 Bigfoot from Sierra Nevada Brewing, the Waldos from Lagunitas 2020. I really would like to revisit Old Stock Ale from North Coast Brewing, Old Foghorn from Anchor. I barely see Anchor now these days. Now, oh yeah, Trader Joe's sells Anchor, just Anchor Steam. But all the other Anchor varieties, I just don't see them anymore. 10 years ago, everywhere, and beautiful beers. Well, it's a red ale, but really like brown, like a reddish brown, right? Rust red, whatever this color is. He said burnt sienna or something. The aromas, it's like that dry hop, that kind of astringent note of hops. Use dry hops in the boil. Gives it an interesting character. I think there are some mass-produced lagers that use dry hopping. Have to check on that. Pretty sure somebody in Alcohol X had posted an old bottle that he had gotten. It's like an antique bottle from the 1970s. And it was called, I can't remember the name, but it was from Blatt's Brewing, meaning at that time Pabst Brewing, because Pabst bought Blatt's. Still owns it. But it was called something fresh hopped ale. It was made, for the mass produced companies. It was saying this beer uses fresh hops, raw hops, which make it better than regular beers, and so on. Looked like it was from about 1978, 76 to 78. Probably made no impression on anybody and went nowhere. But then in 1980, Sierra Nevada started the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, which kind of kick-started the craft beer revolution, if you want to call it that. But of course, craft beer had already started in 1971, 9 years earlier, with Anchor Steam, the reformulated Anchor Steam, which was brewed according to craft beer lines. And then in 1975, they introduced what? Our special Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, our special ale. Hoppy red ale with natural flavors. And then the same year, Liberty Ale, kind of an early American pale ale or even IPA. So that's really the early stages of craft beer. And the whole reason of bringing up that thing from Blatt's, it tears down this myth that mass-produced beer companies, macro companies, didn't want to make craft beer styles. I love Trader Joe's beers, says Craig Swinson. Me too. Generally, mostly. Some of their liquor and wine is questionable in my experience. Highly questionable. Would I review others in the future? Well, yeah, I would. Yes, I would. But I have such a backstock of liquor. I just can't see anything new coming in the next 2 years or longer. I say that, but then I might go somewhere and say, oh, I got to get this, but I don't need to get it. It's ridiculous. I've got multiple straight bourbons in the cap on that shelf, unopened. Why buy more? Multiple rums. Cruzan aged white rum, Cruzan aged gold rum. And is there another one? I can't even remember. More than one bottle of American blended whiskey, multiple Canadian blended whiskeys, multiple blended scotch. So what? And I haven't even addressed single malt scotch, really, except tasting it when my friend David would buy some. So there is really a need, if you want to use the word need, which wouldn't actually be appropriate. But I say a need within the context of the video reviews, which aren't important, to get more single malt scotch and all this. So in my mind, I'm flooded with these thoughts like, oh, you got to try these 50 different liquors, which I see every day on the internet. But I realize it is not practical. It cannot happen. Beer is easy. You get a bottle, you drink it, it's gone, that's it. Throw it in the trash or save it, but I got so much I can't save. You mean the recycler? We don't have that around here. The trash. So that can't really get done. But back to the craft beer thing, you got this myth, and I used to believe it, but I didn't believe it for too long. Only for like a year reading, just like in 1996. Because I was reading stuff, no internet really, but I was reading things that people would put in books, magazines, saying, mass-produced beer companies only wanted yellow fizzy stuff. It was like some kind of plot. I was thinking, that's terrible, that's wrong. Hey, bud. Hello, Craig, says Ronnie. Yes, hello, Ronnie. So, okay. But they had the Budweiser Holiday Lager, very full-flavored lager beer, I think with spices. The Winterfest from Coors. All these Augsburger brands from Stroh's. All kind of craft beers. Michelob, or craft style beers, whatever. Michelob Classic Dark beer had been on the market since what, 81? Now you might say, well, they were responding to the growth of craft beer since 1980. Could be true, but there's a problem with that. Anti-war is anti-quarantine. Right. My friend David comes over, and I can see in the videos we made today, you can see that mask underneath the beard. And I was like, I'm not wearing a mask. He was like, well, I just want to be safe. I said, well, hey. I said, I don't care what other people do. It makes no difference to me. I just got a problem having to suffer for their fear, Ugh. Spicy in my nose. Another thing, well, I did kind of throw a fit at Walmart, but I calmed down after my blood pressure went down and I took some deep breaths. I went to Walmart. They got all this big setup, like this long thing with baskets and tape way to the west. We got to go down and walk through this little tunnel of contraption that they made and then go in. Well, it makes sense lining people up. It doesn't make sense to line people, but it makes sense to line people up when they're busy. It was in the morning. They just opened. There was no one there but me. No, I mean, literally no one there. So this guard, like a Walmart employee, is standing by the door. And I'm walking straight toward the door. I'm just going to go under the tape and go in. He says, you got to go all the way to the end. I said, there's no line. There's nobody there. But you got to get to the front of the line, the back of the line. I said, there is no line. Well, that's the rule. So I'm thinking, wow, this is really an example of people not thinking in any way, like not even using common sense. So I just like saluted him like the fascist salute. I said, "Hi, old kameraden." And I was getting irritated. It's like, I live in Germany in 1939. So they probably weren't as strict. So I was like, this is really insanity, you know? And I was about to lose it, you know, just kind of crack up. You know, I was like, control it, you know, and I calmed down. So he's just doing his job like a guard at Auschwitz, you know. People can do what they want. Just don't force others to do it. No mask for me. Okay. So that bothered me. But by the way, this beer, which is allegedly what this video is about, it's got tannic qualities, a lot of hops. Wow. 42 IBUs, and it lives right up to it. Strong hop flavor, strong bitterness, but not off-putting bitterness, not bitter bitterness. You know what I'm saying? It's like an interesting spicy bitterness. Wow, my nose was like, anytime I eat spicy food, my nose does that. So I'm thinking, wow, even a Coors Light drinker could get used to this. But on second thought, no, they wouldn't. They would still think it's too strong, it's bitter, and they wouldn't drink it. I've given up on being a beer apostle for over 20 years. Because I was all excited about finding all these new styles in 1996. I was telling my family, try this, try that, try this. No! We drink good beer. We drink Coors Light and Miller Lite. I was like, wow, that's really insane. That's closed-minded, man. But you couldn't. It's like an impenetrable wall. Because in their mind, it's like, I'm at the peak. I'm at the pinnacle of beer drinking. I'm drinking Coors Light. Why would I want to lower myself to drink this stinking, rotten, dark beer, which is obviously made incorrectly? You know, and I was like, oh, wow. The only one that would ever really try new beers was my father, who had to give up drinking. Well, I don't say he had to give it up. He did give it up in 2003. I'll say January 03. He claims it was 2002. Doesn't matter. I still say it was. But he said, I'm giving it up. I said, I've heard that story before. Oh, no, I'm giving it up now. He kept to it. It's been 17 years. He said for health reasons. And when you get these people that are in their 70s, they get old, they take every medicine the doctor gives them. So all they do is take medicine all day. And so you can't really drink or eat anything. You can't do anything. You just take all this medicine. It's got all these like bad side effects and probably makes you worse off. And they put you under this fear that you're going to die, you know? So, but you just can't tell people that. Just take everything, you know? So, but he would have tried it. Let's say he wouldn't have done all that, getting on all this medicine for health reasons, you know? These doctors like, oh, like they just want to give you medicine. So he would have probably kept trying it, you know, trying all this stuff. Oh, I mean, he probably would have hated all of it, but he would try it. You know what I'm saying? He would try it, and he might say, "Buh, it's garbage. It tastes like horse urine drained through a dirty sock," something like that. But then a lot of that is just phony because he really will be interested in it. You know what I'm saying? A lot of that is just he's saying it to irritate me, which is effective. So he asks me every day now, like, what are you trying now? When are you doing a bit? Are you doing Fandango Friday? Are you doing Thunder and Thursday? Are you doing Wildcard Wednesday? And then he said, you ought to come up with a new hangout called Mundane, or what do you call it? Mundane Monday or something, like where you, or no, what do you call it? Trash Tuesday or something. I said, what is that? He said, you know, where y'all all bring horrible beers that you can't drink and you can't stomach them and they make you gag. I said, that would be different. Yeah, you ought to do that. That would be really good. I said, yeah, you would come up with something like that. It tastes like beer. It smells like horse blankets. Right. Ronnie said the other day, I never smelled a horse blanket. I have been in these stables. And those beers do kind of smell like that, honestly. When you smell the horse blanket so-called beers, they do kind of smell like that. This real musty, like sweaty smell, which some people might argue, I really don't want to drink a beer that smells like animal sweat. Okay. Or Limburger cheese that smell like sweaty feet, people claim. I like Limburger. It doesn't really smell like they claim, but it does smell strong. It's unbelievable. This beer is spicy, it's tannic, it's brown bread crust flavors. The body's medium and the finish is on the dry side. It's really a great beer. And for $6.99 a 6-pack, how can you beat that? It's a great craft beer. Who makes it? I think Gordon Beers. And then, of course, some people don't consider them a craft beer company because why is that? Well, they're big. And why would that disqualify you? Well, because we just make these arbitrary rules for what is a craft beer. That's really, actually, that's a lot of people will tell me that. What is and what isn't a craft beer? And I'm thinking, I know what you're doing. You're basing on that association's rules. And I told them, do you realize those rules have changed so many times over the last 30 years and they're arbitrary? They just change them at a whim because they have an election, a vote. And they're just malleable. They don't mean anything. They just make them up. And they change the rules to fit whatever they want to fit. Saying it. Is that an IPA? Well, they call it a hoppy red ale. Some companies would call it a red IPA. You see, some companies would call it a red pale India pale ale. Well, it's not too pale, is it? So I think a better term is a hoppy red ale. But going back to the final point, which was actually the original point, people will claim that the major companies, Anheuser-Busch, Coors, Miller, Molson, or Labatt, those two Canadian companies, Pabst, Falstaff, and etc. And they kept consolidating. Where it had some kind of hostile attitude toward craft, what we call craft beers. There's only one little problem with that. It isn't true. Because if you look at the companies over the last 80 years and look at old advertisements, they produced craft beer, what we would call craft beer today. Schaefer beer, pale ale sort of like thing. Ballantine ale, Ballantine India Pale Ale, Ballantine Burton Ale, which is a super strong, like 11% craft style American strong ale. Budweiser Bock beer, Pabst Dark, Miller Dark. There was like a Falstaff ale. Jack's made Jack's beer, but they made all these what we would call craft style beer, like a Scotch ale and stuff. But they didn't sell. People didn't buy them. What are you going to do? Sell beer people don't buy and it sits on the shelf? It sits on the shelf and goes stale and out of date? I don't think so. The whole craft beer movement concept really started with imports. And I don't know why people wouldn't buy the American ones. They would buy them, but not in any volume that would justify making this stuff, you know. I mean, Ballantine IPA limped along from Falstaff, limping along until 1997 when they stopped producing it. In Evansville, was it Fort Wayne, Indiana? I tried Ballantine IPA. It tastes great. Then they brought it back about 20 years later. No, not 20. Let's see, 17 years later. Guess what? Still didn't sell. Oh, well. Because the word got out. That's from Pabst. I ain't borrowing that. So, but the Guinness, the Dos Equis, which was the Ambar back then in the 70s, the Lowenbrau Dark, the St. Pauli Girl Dark beer, all of that kind of spurred on the craft beer movement, the specialty beer. But it's not true that the big companies did not want to make specialty beers. It just didn't. So now they sell. But now what do we have in 2020? Everything flavored. Go shoot an arrow through a store, beer aisle, and you're most likely going to hit a flavored beer. We reviewed a craft beer today. Flavor was strawberry, raspberry, lemons, raspberries. I think I said that already. My friend Dave was like, what is another one of these flavored beers? I said, well, oh, yeah. He hated it, but I told him, I said, you're not grasping the style, Berliner Weisse. Then after the video was shut off, he dumps it in the grass. I said, well, how could you give it a C average, but you dump it out because you say you can't stand drinking it? That would be an F to me, undrinkable. He said, well, I didn't want to say it was a D on air. I said, why? Well, if you think it was bad, say it's bad. And if you can't drink it, it's an F. But he said, well, I just don't like those kind of beers. I said, okay, fair enough. You don't want to go totally berserk on a style when you realize you just don't like the style. It's really not necessarily the quality of the product. So I can live with that. Okay. The Negroni from Evil Twin, we both liked it. But once again, double IPA with natural flavors. So people get on my case a little bit doing the mass-produced flavor beers. I don't really like them, honestly. They're all tart and they taste like Kool-Aid, Jolly Rancher candy, or those little candies where you lick it and you dip it in a little bag and it gets the stuff on it and you eat it and you dip it like you see. It's flim flam. And then the middle-sized companies do the same thing, and then the microbreweries do the same thing. It's got blueberries in it. It's got chocolate. It's got coffee. Well, so what? It's the same concept. It's a major company, a middle-sized company, and a tiny company, and they're all making beers that don't taste like beer. Tastes like coffee, tastes like milk, tastes like chocolate milk, tastes like coconuts, tastes like raspberries, tastes like sour milk, tastes like a horse blanket. I get it. All right. I understand. I grasp the concept. After all these years, I grasped the concept, but I always did grasp the concept. You want to drink the beer. Why? You want the alcohol, but you don't want it to taste like beer. Not complicated. I heard there's a mask shortage in this country. Weird, because I see everyone wearing them. Yeah, mask shortage. Oh, my goodness. 2020, the year of seltzer beers and Corona craziness. Yeah, seltzer beers. Flavored beers. Fear-mongering from the hobgoblin disease. And it's funny that all these mayors and governors, like in Michigan, we have to do this to save lives. I'm like, wow, you're the same person that wants to make sure the abortion clinics stay open, because it's a what they call it, what do they call it? A vital business, a necessary business, an essential business. Message to you, Governor. That doesn't save lives. That kills people. You know, this is not complicated. So but they're lying. You know, they're not worried about saving lives. They're worried about increasing their power. Power man. I'm power man. I'm drunk on power. Oh. I'm the governor of New York, and I'm drunk on power over you. But they're getting a little nervous now because of all these uprisings. There's these protests. Now you say, that's a small amount. And notice Yahoo News was quick to point out, well, 90% of Americans still support the blah. So, I was like, yeah, but they don't understand. It's just the beginning of it. It's going to get way worse in 2 weeks. These are peaceful protests. But read the rhetoric. Judge Napolitano said, these guys are not going to give up this power too easily. We're going to have to pry it from their hands. You know, you have to take it back sometimes, you see. So I don't know. If they're smart, they'll back off. They're not really smart though, but they might back off in the next 2 weeks. It's up to them, but I think they could just be real sorry about some things, coming up. The governor shutting down the state should not receive pay until they open back up. Right. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of bad things going on, man. And it's all their fault. Okay. But I don't believe their lies about it's about saving lives. Now, maybe in Louisiana, the governor believes that. He's an anti-abortion. So, I mean, he's nominally anti-abortion. He doesn't do anything about it, except when the state legislature passed a strict anti-abortion law. Well, he signed it because he couldn't very well not sign it, especially since it was an election year, right? But he's like nominally anti-abortion. I think he's in reality doesn't really want to be bothered with it. That's just the feeling I get. But he's certainly not like these governors like in New York and Michigan who are like virulently pro-abortion. Like every time they wake up and there wasn't an abortion in 10 minutes, for the last 2 minutes, they get depressed. They like get off on that. And I'm not saying that to be ugly. They just, every time they see a dead baby, they get aroused. That's like their satanic like feelings about things. And I'm sorry. Anti-war, anti-abortion, anti-shutdowns. Yeah, that's about it. Anti-tyranny, don't forget that. So I don't know what Lee Greenwood's going to do. This might have wrecked his career because he had that famous song, Proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. Well, that's written off. It wasn't true anyway. When he wrote the song, Americans weren't really free. And because you got government telling you who you can rent your property to, who you can sell a house to, who you can hire, how much you got to pay them. It's not really an example of freedom. But, that whole song was about America, the free country, we're exceptional, we're different, I was like, yeah. And now it's so obviously wrong. It's so obviously incorrect that it's laughable. Ronnie says free, ha, 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 with a laughing, crying face. Yeah, free to do what you're told. But there's hope. I'm not a negative person. I'm not really a negative person. The international left has a bad tendency of overreaching. They always think we've won. It's time for the hammer and sickle. It's time for the killing fields. It's time for the year zero. They're all like Robespierre, but they don't have the guts to be like Robespierre or Pol Pot, Selah Slar. But they think that's it. It's the paradigm shift. It's the age of Aquarius. This is the year of Lucifer. This is year zero. This is, we're going to hang the last priest from the entrails of the last king or whatever. And then they go too far and they expose themselves. And then when the counterattack comes and they're whining and crying, oh, look what you're doing to us. All we was trying to do was massacre millions of people. It's like, no, you do these things. And when people counterattack, you cry about it. They always do that. Okay, how come the army isn't protecting our freedoms right now? I thought that's what they do. Yeah, ha, 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 ha. All right, well, Drive-Thru Red. It's a winner. It's an A beer. The coronavirus response, it's a loser. It's an F response. Thumbs down for the coronavirus response. It's wrong. It's foolish. It's useless. It's dangerous. And all around terrible. So how do you vote for the coronavirus? I vote no. It's bad. It's a real stinker. All right. Thanks for watching this video production.